Hey everyone, and welcome to another SkillCapped guide. In this guide, you'll learn everything there is to know about peeking in Valorant. If you are constantly dying in Valorant, then you are likely making a few crucial mistakes that can easily be fixed by learning how to peek properly. By taking these few key mechanics and implementing them into your gameplay, then you will find yourself dying less and netting more kills. In this video, we will be breaking down every single way you can peek so that you have an upper hand against your opponent in Valorant. This information has been curated by the top Valorant players and coaches who have spent countless hours of research to give you the most effective and up-to-date tips you won't find anywhere else. Remember to click the sub button and the bell icon to keep up to date with the most high-quality Valorant guides that you won't find on any other channels. So starting off, we need to talk about peeker's advantage, which is a huge problem in many FPS games. The Valorant devs have expressed from the very beginning of Valorant that one of their main goals is to get rid of peeker's advantage completely. However, it looks like they've fallen short on this promise, with peeker's advantage being a really big problem in Valorant at the moment. You might be asking, what exactly is peeker's advantage? Well, peeker's advantage is the advantage that the player who is peeking an angle has. This player gains an advantage due to a variety of different technical reasons related to ping, but basically the peeking player will be able to see and shoot the defending enemy before they are able to react. Currently in Valorant, peeker's advantage is presenting itself most significantly when a player has 140 ping or higher. This means if you're facing a high ping player defensively holding an angle against them and find yourself constantly dying to their peeks where you barely had any time to react, it's likely due to the peeker's advantage problem. Don't worry though, as the developers have stated that they are looking to limit this as much as possible, so expect changes in the future to address this. However, in the meantime, you can actually counter the peeker's advantage, well, by peeking angles yourself instead of just holding an angle. This is just one more reason why it's so important to understand how to peek properly in Valorant. Alright, enough hype, let's jump straight into it. Our first peeking mechanic you're going to learn is jiggle peeking. This is something that is fundamental to mastering the game. In fact, every single pro player uses jiggle peeking to not only net them more kills, but also make them more difficult to hit. Your goal when jiggle peeking is to peek angles as fast as possible, gaining as much intel as you can while trying to expose as little of your hitbox to enemy players. If you're able to master jiggle peeking, you will find yourself able to peek around corners for enemies without exposing yourself too much to your opponent and instantly dying. So how exactly do you use this amazing mechanic? Well, to start, you're going to want to walk up to the angle that you want to peek. This way, the enemy will not be able to hear any footsteps giving off your location. The next step is to move into the open and quickly back into cover. For example, if I wanted to peek this angle, I would press A until I'm barely out in the open, and then I would quickly press D to return to cover. Then, just repeat this process until you have enough information to decide your next move. Your goal is to move as fast as you can, but don't be afraid to hop into the training ground to perfect this mechanic at a slower pace and then work your way up. A huge plus to jiggle peeking is that you don't have to worry about your footsteps being audible. This is because you aren't moving far enough to trigger the footsteps sound. Jiggle peeking is the foundation to all peeking in Valorant, and once you learn to master this, you will be able to add on to it with our upcoming mechanics. Jiggle peeking is a crucial fundamental skill, but you won't be able to add on to it until you are able to master crosshair placement. Bad crosshair placement is the biggest mistake that new players to FPS games make. They're always aiming at the enemy's body level or feet while turning corners. Instead, they should be aiming at head level so they don't have to flick to their opponents, and instead simply left click for easy kills. Here's the thing though, even more advanced FPS players are making a super common mistake as well. They're using the incorrect method for crosshair placement. Yeah, you heard me right. There's more than one way you can keep your crosshair at head level to help you yield kills. We can break down crosshair placement into two different methods: tracing corners and pre-aiming where your enemy will be once you peek. To start, let's dive into pre-aiming where the enemy might be. This method is mainly linked to jiggle peeking because when you're performing a jiggle peek, you aren't going to want to have to flick to your opponent. If you have an understanding to where the enemy might be, then you can line up your crosshair on the wall before even peeking out. This way, you're able to just left click to secure the kill. Our second method of crosshair placement is tracing the corner of an angle. In this method, all you want to do is keep your crosshair on the corner of some sort of cover. You are mainly using this technique whenever you're wide swinging or walking around corners, not for jiggle peeking. For example, we can't just go around the map jiggle peeking every single corner. The round would end before we even got to a bomb site. When you don't have time to jiggle peek, you should always be tracing corners instead of pre-aiming. This way, your crosshair will be at head level at each new possible enemy position as you turn the corner to make sure players aren't sitting in weird spots waiting to kill you. Now we're going to take a look at two examples and explain what type of crosshair placement you should use. In our first example, we are on bind sitting on a site. We know that a player is sitting in showers, so we can place our crosshair at head level, and then right when we perform our jiggle peek, we'll be able to fire on the enemy's head and kill them. This is a way better alternative than tracing the corner because we already know where this player is, and by pre-aiming with our jiggle peek, we shoot and move as fast as possible while giving the enemy the least amount of time to react to our peek. Instead, when you're walking around a corner, you give the enemy so much more time to react. For our next example, we're going to be rotating from the C site on Haven to the A site. If you just run carelessly, you're risking the chance of a player sitting in one of the many cubbies and killing you. We need to trace corners while we are checking angles because there are so many places people can be sitting to catch you off guard, and we don't have the time to jiggle peek every single angle. Moving on to our next peeking method, pre-fire peeking. This technique goes with any other peeking method, and it will allow you to possibly get kills before the enemy even knows that you're coming. Pre-fire peeking is exactly what it sounds like. As you peek angles, you just want to add a small burst fire where you believe players might be. This is a great technique that players can use once they see a pattern of how other players like to play. For example, let's say that a player keeps sitting cubby on C long of Haven. Right when we peek, we're able to pre-fire where the player is most likely to peek from, and this will allow us to catch the enemy off guard. Another way that you can use pre-fire peeking is while you jiggle peek. Let's say that you jiggle peek and you spot a player holding you from a pretty close distance. You can decide to jiggle peek again, but this time you can fire a shot right before you run back into cover. Pre-fire peeking combined with good crosshair placement is how you can get quick, easy kills that can make it seem like you're hacking to the enemy. Now, we've been talking about shooting while using these peeking methods, and I'm sure a couple of you are confused as to how you can do this accurately without your bullets spraying everywhere. Well, this has to do with the technique of strafe shooting, which is mandatory to master in order to peek properly. Strafe shooting involves sending a movement command in one direction, let's say to the left, so we hold the A key. Then we let go of the A key and instantly hit the D key to the right. Well, there's a time right before you start moving in the other direction that you're standing perfectly still. It's in this moment you're perfectly accurate and can shoot a 2 to 3 shot burst. This is how you can jiggle peek as well as pre-fire angles with perfect accuracy. You hold A to move to the left, then release A and hold D. Then left click to burst right before your character begins moving to the right. This can be done in the opposite direction as well. Hold D to move to the right, then release D and hold A. then left click to burst right before the character begins to move to the left. By mastering strafe shooting, you'll be able to incorporate accurate gunfire into each of your peeks. Alright, moving on. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You peek around a corner, win the first gunfight, but the enemy has a teammate that ends up killing you. You keep asking your teammates to peek with you, but they don't back you up. Well, what if I told you there's actually a way to kill both of these enemies by yourself? The technique that we're talking about is clearing one angle at a time. So many players don't understand that even if you check one corner, that there are tons of other angles players can be playing from. We can use the jiggle peeking method we previously talked about to clear one angle, and then we can keep repeating the process as we clear every angle. Don't just wide swing out, exposing yourself to multiple enemies at once. Jiggle peek each angle at a time. This way, even if there are multiple enemies, you will only be taking a gunfight with one of them at a time. Okay, this all sounds great, but there's still one big problem. Let's say that you've cleared one angle, then two, then as you're peeking the third angle, a player pops up from the first angle that you cleared. This is a huge problem that can be fixed so easily. You see, most players when jiggle peeking will press A to peek around the corner, then D to move back and hide behind cover. However, they make one key mistake in this moment, standing still before jiggle peeking again. Instead, if you want to take your game to the next level, you need to be constantly switching between the A and D keys. You can think of this as incorporating smaller jiggles between your larger jiggle peeks. This will limit the times that you stand completely still so that if an enemy pops up from a previously cleared angle, you aren't just the sitting duck. You have time to flick onto their head while you're dodging their initial shot. And in Valorant, we all know that a moving target is way harder to hit than a stationary one. Alright, knowing different ways to peek angles in certain situations is great, but if you don't understand this next concept, you will not be able to get a positive KDA in your matches. The concept that we're talking about is angle advantage. Angle advantage is a concept in Valorant where the player holding an angle from the farther distance will see the closer player first. Here's a quick rundown on how this works. So let's say both of these players were peeking the same angle, except player A was holding the angle from a further distance than player B. The angle that player A is forming is allowing it to see player B before it's even in the vision of player B. Now hopping over to Valorant, we will show exactly how this works. In this example, we are going to Haven A site. The player on the left side of the screen is holding the angle from a much further distance than the player on the right side of your screen. This allows the left side player to have an advantage going into the fight because they will be able to see the right side player first. What this means is that when you're incorporating these peeking techniques we've taught you, you always want to try to be as far away from the corner as possible, since it will either give you the angle advantage or reduce how significant of an angle disadvantage that you have. Moving on, next we have one of the most common mistakes players make in Valorant: wide swinging. Wide swinging is the opposite of jiggle peeking. You're running out into the opponent's vision far away from any cover. Doing this, you're exposing yourself to multiple angles at once and hard committing to the fight. For these reasons, wide swinging is a terrible thing to do in most situations. However, there are still a few scenarios that wide peeking can be viable. For one, let's say that a player keeps countering your jiggle peek every single round. This can be caused by two issues. Maybe the enemy is holding his crosshair really close to the wall to specifically react faster to a jiggle peek. Or perhaps he has the angle advantage and is further away from the corner, allowing him to see you earlier, giving him time to react to a jiggle peek. In this situation, you could try wide swinging. This will counter an opponent holding a tight crosshair position, forcing them to land a flick shot. It also helps deal with angle disadvantage since the enemy is going to see you first anyways. You might as well move slightly longer to force them to land a more difficult shot. The only real issue with this is that you expose yourself to so many different angles by doing this. So you need to be confident that you're only facing one enemy. One other technique you can try to incorporate into your wide swing is crouching at the end of it. By crouching, we force our enemy to have to reposition their crosshair downwards while also controlling their recoil. It also helps you in controlling your own recoil since you're committing to the fight by wide swinging and likely spraying. Essentially, by wide swinging, you force them to flick and adjust their crosshair horizontally. When then crouching, you force them to then readjust vertically, making you difficult to hit. And lastly, when wide swinging an opponent, it's extremely important that you walk up to the wall so that you don't make any noise before you wide swing. You don't want the enemy to hear your footsteps until you're already in their line of sight. This is the key to the wide swing success and catching the opponent off guard. Just always remember that when you decide to wide swing, you are fully committing to the fight, so you want to use it sparingly. Now, whether you want to gain information, waste the opposing team's utility, or just bait out op shots, this next technique will greatly increase your chance of survival. I'm talking about shoulder peeking. Shoulder peeking is a method of peeking where you just allow a sliver of your shoulder to be shown. The main goal of this is to bait out that op shot and force the opposing player to sit through the reload animation while you're firing shots in his direction. To perform a shoulder peek, walk up to an angle you want to be seen at and run towards the open until a small portion of your shoulder can be seen. Then immediately drop back into cover. Remember that even though you won't be able to see the enemy, they will still be able to see your shoulder. If you get vision of your enemy, then you're doing a jiggle peek, not a shoulder peek. As soon as the player sees the sliver of your shoulder, he will react and take a shot thinking you're committing to the peek. You can then do a jiggle peek right after, knowing they're in the reload animation, and kill them. You could also use this technique to cross to another angle. For example, on bind, if you want to cross A short, but a player is holding you with an op. All you have to do is shoulder peek them, and after they fire, you can cross safely. The one downside to this method of peeking is that since you are playing close to a wall, you have the risk of getting wall banged due to the high wall penetration rating on a lot of the weapons in Valorant. This makes this method risky when going up against Vandals and Phantoms just because they can spray through the walls and diminish a lot of your health. Okay, so let's be honest for a second. If you try to shoulder peek every single round, players will catch on and just start shooting you through the wall as previously mentioned. But this alternative will allow you to mix things up, and it's a less risky way to bait out shots. We're talking about bunnyhop shoulder peeking. So essentially, you're going to want to start by walking up to an angle you want to perform the peek at, and then you want to bunny hop to peek, but once you are out in the open, you want to turn back and land back into cover. This is a great way to switch up your peeking since you'll suddenly be showing yourself at a higher elevation, throwing your enemy's aim off. Another plus to this method is that you can turn a lot faster because of a mechanic known as air strafing. This is a way better alternative than the shoulder peek because when you are shoulder peeking, you are using your A and D key to control your movement. This takes way more time to change direction, and you will want to be out in the open the shortest amount of time possible. For example, when you do a normal shoulder peek, you are using A and D keys to control your movement. This takes time for you to change from one direction to the next. However, when you air strafe, you turn in the air and actually get back to cover faster than if you had just changed directions on the ground. If you don't know about air strafing or bunny hopping in Valorant, then we have a whole guide that will get you bunny hopping like the pros. Be sure to check that out by clicking on the info card at the top right hand corner of your screen right now. So we've been talking about the best ways to peek your opponents in Valorant, but one thing that we haven't talked too much about is how not to peek. Whenever new players hop into a game like Valorant, they love to walk to keep their positions hidden until they can secure the kill. But this leads to a huge mistake that these players constantly make. They will continually walk around corners. This is a terrible thing to do because it gives the enemy so much time to see you coming around a corner and kill you. You can prevent this by instead jiggle peeking. You still want to walk around the map, don't get me wrong, but when you get to a corner that is common for an enemy to be watching from, you need to switch to jiggle peeking. All you need to do is walk up to that corner and then jiggle peek each angle at a time. Try to stay as far away from the corner to reduce your angle disadvantage. And remember, when jiggle peeking properly, you won't move far enough to activate the footstep sounds, still keeping you silent as if you were walking. Although shift walking around corners is a terrible idea, sometimes you'll get caught off guard, and you need to know that while walking in Valorant, your first bullet accuracy is actually nearly perfect. This means you shouldn't be afraid to shoot that first shot before you come to a complete stop if you're holding down the shift or crouch key. Speaking of crouching, the final topic we're going to be discussing in this guide is going to help fix a huge mistake we see coming from Counter-Strike players. In CSGO, you would maintain your momentum after releasing the movement key you are pressing. This would allow you to slide into a crouch as you peeked an angle. This would move your head to a lower position and your opponent wouldn't expect it. Although this was super useful in CS, it isn't a good strategy for Valorant due to the fact that your character comes to a stop almost immediately after releasing one of the movement keys. This means that this method of sliding into a crouch peek does not work as well. This is wrong to do, very similar to how wide swinging can be wrong. You are hard committing to a fight and there isn't too big of a chance that you get the opportunity to uncrouch and then run back into cover. In general, you shouldn't be crouch peeking around corners. A better alternative would be to jiggle peek instead. That being said, the benefit to crouch peeking is that your head is at a lower level than normal and you have more spray control. This is why it should almost be exclusively used in conjunction with the wide swinging technique. Just as a final thought, don't be afraid to mix up the way you peek an angle. It isn't smart to do the same peek over and over again, and you can confuse your enemies by combining a lot of these techniques together. For example, let's say that you just shoulder peek. The player holding you now knows where you're coming from and can position their crosshair for when you peek again. This is when you can wide swing and catch the opposing player off guard. Especially as you climb the ranks, peeking can become more of a mind game, and subverting the opponent's expectations can reward you with a quick and easy kill. Well, that is it for our ultimate peeking guide for Valorant. If you have any topics you want to see us cover on this channel, be sure to let us know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe with notifications on so you can stay up to date with all the newest Valorant guides. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.